Call the Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, July 25th, 2022 to order, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
And as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Shrine. Mr. Shrine is absent at the moment. Ms. Baker. Ms. Baker is absent. Ms. Turner.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody signed in?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
And item 4 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 21st, 2022 meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the July 21st meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Ayes have it, and the minutes are approved as presented. We have 2 legislative matters referred to the committee, and the first one is resolution number R 2022-0249.
Resolution number 2022-0249, making awards on requisition number 7813 to various providers in a total amount not to exceed $8 million for cellular mobility devices and services.
Good afternoon, Janelle Green, Department of IT. These 2 contracts are for mobile services for the county. So the larger portion of the agreements, contract number 2315 with AT&T is for $7.5 million over 5 years. And the $500,000 amount, contract number 2316 with Verizon is, again, $500,000, and that covers the public safety and justice services and sheriff's departments. So, again, to address, these are 5-year agreements. We do have an option of 2 3-year renewal terms. These are the current providers for services throughout the county. The AT&T covers a larger bulk of the county. Right now, as of June 2022, there's about 4,719 lines on that particular agreement. On the Verizon agreement, it's 105 as of June 2022. The public safety / sheriff's portion of this is to provide coverage in the jails. The Verizon contract, they did a test and has a wider coverage band than the AT&T contract does in the jails. So we thought it was important to separate those out based upon the coverage. I don't know if you have any further questions in regards to these agreements.
So, is separating out the 2 contracts, is that new, or have we been doing that in the past?
We've been doing that for a while. We've had the AT&T agreement in since at least 2014, and I believe the Verizon has been in since, I want to say 2019. It's largely managed by the Sheriff's Department for that, and it's been in effect for a while.
And how does the cost that we're going to be paying over the next 5 years compare with what we're currently paying?
It's largely the same, although the amount that we're asking for has increased on the AT&T end due to a large body of users, particularly after the pandemic. I won't say after the beginning of the pandemic, we did see an uptick in usage and line activations. You know, people were working more either remotely or more mobilely, so we did have to increase to cover those users.
Questions by my colleagues? So I'll ask a couple more questions. Our current contracts, when do they expire?
So the Verizon agreement, they're using purchase orders right now to cover their bases until this agreement moves forward. AT&T did expire in January, and the reason why we're late here today is because we didn't get all the agreements and documents from AT&T in a timely fashion. So we understand that we are severely late, and we have not paid anything on those agreements until those invoices until these agreements are in place.
So regarding AT&T, how have we been handling it from from January to present?
We've still been able to use the accounts and as normal. Again, AT&T was the cause of the delays on this, so they've been agreeable and been working with us and knowing that we would be presenting this today.
So is this contract going to be backdated?
Yes.
To January?
Yes, it would.
And the contract with Verizon, is it going to be effective on signature?
That is correct.
Because that one doesn't need to be backdated.
Correct.
So at some point, we might have to deal with these contracts aren't going to end at the same time, but I guess that's probably not a big problem.
No, and then that's the beauty of them being separate agreements, so we can just cancel or end those agreements as needed.
So I'd like to note that Councilman Tron has joined the meeting, and check again with my colleagues if there are any questions regarding the AT&T and Verizon contracts. Hearing none, and not wanting to have you wait until after the summer recess, I'm going to ask if one of my colleagues would offer a motion to recommend this resolution for approval on second reading suspension.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to favorably report Resolution 2022-0249 to the full council with recommendation to leadership to put it on the agenda for the August 2nd meeting for second reading suspension. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. The ayes have it, and it is so recommended.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is Resolution 2022-0250.
Resolution number 2022-0250, making awards on requisition number 9509 to various providers in the total amount not to exceed $3 million for the purchase of hardware, software, and other peripheral items from an established technology supply catalog.
Good afternoon, Janelle Green again from the Department of IT. This is a master agreement that we have for various technology items as established by the Department of IT's standards list. So there's hundreds of items that are probably on that list. We did post an RFP for services at the end of April. That was submitted to about 24 vendors. This master contract will allow us to be able to procure technology items in a quicker fashion. What we have seen over the last year is that there's been a lot of supply chain issues and things like that. And our ability to kind of cut to the chase and start ordering directly with vendors would be advantageous for us due to supply chain issues, lead time issues. And so we did put this out. And we have in agreement with M&J and TEC Communications to provide, again, that master agreement of not to exceed $3 million. So while on the agenda it does state $1.5 million evenly divided between the vendors, with this agreement, we have the ability to move money in between vendors depending on the kind of items that we need to procure.
So do we currently have a contract of this kind in place?
No, we do not. We previously had something similar. It was known as the reverse auction contract that we had that was effective from, I believe, November 30th of 2017 to November 30th of 2020. And so we found that it was a good idea, and we were able to utilize that pretty well in the past. And once we investigated and looked at what we were getting from the ARPA funding, we decided to move forward with this particular kind of agreement.
So, how many vendors bid on this contract?
Only the two presented. So, we did, again, with our plan holders list, we sent it out to 24 vendors. And so we only got 2 responses back. We opted to go with these 2 vendors. Largely, M&J is a very large distributor. They're on state term with the state of Ohio, and they actually submitted the bids on most of the items in the catalog. We also went with TEC. They are a Platinum Cisco partner, and they only bid on the Cisco items. So we wanted to make sure they were covered on a number of items. Note that it's not every item that we wanted to include in the catalog, but between the 2 vendors, we cover a wide swath of what we wanted to have covered.
So, will you be purchasing under state term contracts on the MNJ?
Well, some of the price either is matching state term or is lower than state term. So this is why this contract is advantageous for us.
And with Tech Communications, since this contract doesn't specify particular pricing for any individual items, how are you going to know that you're getting reasonable prices when you buy under this contract?
So with this, we're going to mimic what we did when we had the reverse auction contract. So we basically sent out a request of what we want to procure. We'll send it out to the vendors that are on the list, and we'll get the pricing back for them, and we can determine. We kind of have our own, essentially, competitive bidding internally, and then we will go with that vendor and essentially do kind of a PO and say we'll go with you with your pricing on that particular purchase.
But you only have two vendors available, the 2 on the list.
Correct.
Is that correct?
And it's not to say that we won't verify anything with state term or other vendors. These will be our preferred vendors that we can reach out to, especially if you want to move quickly on a purchase.
Questions by my colleagues? So we want to keep the IT department running along. So I will look for a motion again for a second reading suspension on this item. Is there a motion?
Second. Oh, so move or which you're looking for? Did you move? I'll move.
I'll make a second.
Okay, so it's moved by Sean and seconded by Tuma to recommend this resolution favorably to the full council for second reading suspension. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it, and it is so recommended for the August 2nd meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, we now come to our discussion item, which is an update on the Harris real property tax project.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. I'm Andy Johnson, Chief Information Officer for the Department of IT here at Cuyahoga County. First of all, I want to thank you for taking some time to hear this update on our Harris tax program. And I'd like to give you just a quick overview about what you're going to hear. And I'm on the executive summary. right now. And basically, in full transparency, I want to talk to you about what our plan is going forward. We, last time we reported out, and when I mean last time, the last session we had I believe it was in June, we reported out a specific plan on how we were going to make our go-live date. And in that time, since that time, we have revisited that plan as we normally would in any sort of project of this magnitude. And we've made some adjustments, and I think that these adjustments are going to be very positive for the program, but it's what we wanted to highlight for you this afternoon. And probably the first and largest adjustment, and we'll go into detail in this in a little bit, but the biggest adjustment that we made is the introduction of a parallel phase. Jeez. Spam. Sorry about that.
I get them too.
The largest adjustment we made is a addition of a true parallel phase. And what that allows us to do is to go to more of a just-in-time approach. So again, we'll cover this a little bit later, but rather than having this massive cutoff big bang, we now are able to draw some conversion items closer, in other words, do those sooner, and then push off some items a little bit later. And in that, we're able then to deliver that go live for the first round of printing in December. Again, we'll go through that detail in a later slide. But what, again, this also allows us then a little bit longer window to create our bug fixes, to do more analysis, and to get comfortable with that parallel period. The other advantage is that with this parallel, we're keeping MVP, which is our legacy system, with and in sync with Harris, which is our to-be system. Having those two in sync for a period of time will allow us to analyze, to understand, are they producing the same results, but it'll also allow us to make that go, no-go decision later into the process. We can be absolutely sure then when we go live that we truly are going to produce bills, be able to collect the money, and then be able to divvy that money up to Cuyahoga County. And with all of this, the thing I think that we need to keep in mind is that we'll have multiple go, no-go checks throughout this process. Again, we'll cover the details here in a minute. The other thing that we wanted to bring to your attention that we'll cover is that the pressure on the teams to deliver testing still exists. It's still a very challenging period for our teams, but we are keeping the pressure on to do that user acceptance testing, to do that system integration testing. That does not go away. The other thing I want to mention is that there's no change to the financial picture from what we presented last time. If you recall, this is a fixed bid situation. We pay on milestones, and we have not yet hit a milestone which necessitates a payment. You'll see that the slide is, in fact, just a representation from what we presented last time. And then finally, when you look at the risk profile of our project, there is a significant change to the risk, and that is with this parallel. We'll cover that in the presentation, but keep in mind that with parallels, they're extremely difficult. We need to keep legacy system and live system in sync as we march forward. And that now has introduced itself as a risk to the project. I will pause there. We'll get into the meat of the presentation. I'll introduce Deb Davdovich, who is the executive on the project. But if there's questions, happy to take those now, but I would encourage us to wait for the presentation.
I think you're good to continue.
Okay. Thanks, Deb.
Sure. All right. So as Andy discussed, this is more of a phased approach for Go Live. So when you look at this presentation, I apologize, it's a little bit hard to read. Maybe it's easier on your screen there. But you'll see that, we're here in the middle of July, right? So MVP is still our system of record. Underneath the MVP system of record, we've just highlighted some of our production activities that are of major importance. This isn't all of our activities, but these are some of the things that are happening. So the big thing that we're planning on is we do a settlement in MVP around the 10th of August. We are going to take a snapshot of MVP right when that settlement is complete, and we're going to import that data into Govern. So we've done some parallel testing in the past where it's been a snapshot. We did a snapshot in 2019, in 2020, in 2021. So we've kind of, we have a well-oiled process, I would say, for the data conversion. And we're going to be testing in the live, in MVP, we're going to be testing those same transactions in Govern. So that is going to require a lot of coordination. We're going to have our IT team help a lot with that data entry into Govern. We're going to be getting reports out of MVP on a nightly basis, all of the payment information, importing that into Govern, keeping the two systems in sync. We've got in October, and as you'll see across the top, we've got the diamonds there for the various no-go checkpoints. So we're going to be continue evaluating where we're at with this project. This is our plan right now. Obviously, if anything changes, we've always talked about that pothole that we could reach, that we could hit, that could derail us. We're going to continue to monitor this process. We're still going to be doing some user acceptance testing throughout the course of this project, in addition to our parallel activities. And we're going to be doing system integration testing throughout this process as well. During the first couple weeks of our parallel, we will be doing some training for that parallel, so training for the parallel testing. And then as other items are getting ready to be tested in Govern, or as we're approaching more towards a go live timeframe, we'll be doing just-in-time training for those processes as well. So I know that's a lot. Are there any questions on this schedule or?
My question is, I know at the last presentation, we were in the middle of various testing processes.
Yes.
And my question is, are those processes still continuing on in the same way, or have those been modified?
We are still continuing with that, and we've got another slide that goes a little bit deeper into some of the testing and where we're at with that. But yes, we will be continuing to do system integration testing, some user acceptance testing, but most importantly, we're going to be making sure that in the production environment, and while we're doing it in MVP, we're also going to be doing it in Govern to make sure that we get the same results for those real-time scenarios.
Other questions? Okay.
So, we previously we were talking about an October go live, right? We picked that time because that's more of a quiet time. We've got a third billing that happens, but really we're not ramping up again until we calculate tax bills at the end of December. So again, that was kind of our big bang approach, was to go live in October so that we could have time to do that data snapshot, do that conversion activities, and be ready for the go live. That was more of the linear focus, and we refer to that in the slide as the big bang approach, right? It kind of compressed all of our testing into these windows, and they were very linear, right? So we had a complete user acceptance testing, we had a complete system integration testing, we did the training, and then we went to go live. Now we're spreading that out, right? So we'll still be doing that system integration testing and all those other tests, but we've got a longer window to do it. It allows us for a more stable system because, again, we're making sure that the two systems are in sync. And it allows us to begin some of those conversion activities sooner. So instead of waiting for a final conversion until October, we're doing a conversion in August, where we're going to be able to test it in a true production environment. And again, this aligns. We were had a lot of engagement with our fiscal and treasury leadership team. They looked at this in detail as we were building out this plan, and this makes the most sense to them. So this is our plan as it stands right now.
So Am I correct that under either plan, that the primary goal was to do the next full round of tax bills under the new system, and that remains the same?
That does remain the same, yes. And we'll be doing a little mini parallel with the third billing that happens in October. So that's just the delinquent parcels from the July billing that have not been paid. So we will be running all of those processes to compare those tax bills in both systems. And that's about, like, again, about 20,000 records.
So it sounds like you're doing kind of a repeat of a process that worked successfully in the run-up to the payroll and WFM on the
So Dale, without giving away too much of my inner feelings here, I'm risk averse, right? And these huge things that happen, right? We had a big bang approach with ERP. We have a big bang approach. Lots of things can go wrong. I much prefer a phased approach into things, so we can try to attack little issues as we're going live and progressing. We can tackle these issues rather than having thousands of issues hit at once. With this,
It
I'm sorry.
certainly worked well on WFM payroll.
Yeah, we like to think that we did pretty well there. And in this scenario, when Deb talks about pulling forward that conversion, that allows us a little bit of, I don't want to say relax, but it allows us time to evaluate that conversion. Whereas before, and then we evaluate, and then we can start using it, and we can evaluate as we're using it in almost a simulated live environment. So that's why I prefer these phased approaches to going live.
Okay, good. Okay, continue.
All right. So I'm not going to read all of these activities, but these are just a list of some of the business activities that need to be done in MVP and govern during the parallel. So it's definitely not going to be easy. There's a lot of things that go on a daily basis. But again, we're going to monitor it very closely. We're going to be doing as many reports as we can to compare the two systems. There's going to be a big awareness campaign to all the staff. And again, our internal IT analysts are going to help lift the load with some of these areas because we know that it is a lot of work on existing staff.
Yes,
The slide we
Councilman
just went
Shan.
to. You got parallels. Do every one of those activities have to take place in order for this to be a success? Or can something fall off the table and still have success?
Everything does have to be done in parallel. I would say, there may be situations where we don't get all of these done, but then, we're going to have to run reports and make sure that we get them caught up to date. So I would say in a parallel, yes, everything needs to be done in both systems for them to be balanced.
For example, if you have to catch every one of these veterans on these homestead exemptions, for this to be a success, but do you have to have them all to go forward? Can you come back and catch those in a month or two or something of that nature and do a manual adjustments for those few that maybe you don't have all the data points on?
So actually, I think that's a very good point. And even when we do testing, Jack, you're probably familiar with this at times, you never can hit 100%. If
Right.
you wait for 100%, you'll never
get there.
You'll never get there. And so I think when we talk about this parallel activity, we every day will be looking for every one of these. One of these items will for sure happen during that parallel period, probably 1,000 times these will happen. To your point, if let's say something is off, we're off whatever, we missed one, or we're $100 off, or something like that, as long as, in my opinion, as long as it's identifiable, and let's say we can't, for whatever reason, we can't make that correction during that parallel period, but once we go live, we can make that correction, then I think that's a success, right? As long as we have it identified, that we know what our issue is going into the quote, cutover for live, I think we'll be okay and we can call that a success. I think what we're looking at is, wow, if you know, if we've got half of them that aren't showing up and we can't figure out why.
That's a different story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
But
totally different story.
How many records actually are we looking for as far as real estate records? If you had what's the number that you're looking?
I think we have about 20,000 transactions we're expecting in this period.
Okay, so if
About
for some reason
20,000.
you should lose 5 or 10 or 15 that don't hit, you can come back and manually correct those, I would think. And you don't want to shut the whole system down for lack of 0.5% or 0.25%. I wouldn't think.
Right.
Okay, so when you say we want to try and get there, we're at least acknowledging that it's very difficult to get to 100% without having to do something. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an effort, and we're not trying to automate as much as we can to try and find those discrepancies. And as long as we can identify them and resolve them, yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Continue.
Okay. So the next screen that we have are project milestones. This is just at a high level. It doesn't include all of the milestones for the project, but just to give you a handle on where we're at. With user acceptance testing, we're currently at 81% complete. So that's an achievement in itself, I would say. You know, that includes over 1,024 test cases that have passed. So we really only have, for user acceptance testing, we really only have a little over 258 actually, test cases that are still awaiting fixes for us to be able to go through and test those. Some of those are related to settlement, which are upcoming activities that we're going to be doing. Our billing parallel, we've talked about that previously. That's going through all of the activities from beginning to end. It includes regression testing and that settlement testing. That's currently at 25%. We're anticipating we're going to wrap that up by mid-November. Again, system integration testing, final bug fixes, these things are all ongoing up until our go-live date. So we do have some post-go-live items. That includes a forfeited land sale and a sanitary sewer. Those are actually not needed until later on in the year in 2023, so those will be post-go-live.
Another question. The folks at Harris, are they aware of what all you're doing to put this together and all the?
Absolutely, yes.
This is valuable information that we're talking about here. And I'm sure they'd love for you to give it to them, but by the same token, it's valuable information. And from a market standpoint, from an education standpoint, it seems to me we're back in the negotiating side saying, hey, this is stuff that belongs to us. These are assets of us. This time, how you did it, what your plan is, what your program is, all those things become valuable when they try to go out and market this to other 87 other counties out there. And so I hope we're recognizing, as Abraham Lincoln said, your time is your only stock in trade. This is an asset, these time commitments that you folks are making. I'm just suggesting
Absolutely.
that it's the businessman in me says that this is a valuable piece of property that we're creating here. And we're talking about it as what we've gone through, but the next 87 are going to have to go through the same thing, and it's valuable. Whether we do it as a consulting service to these other counties or whatever happens to be, it just seems to me that there's something that has a marketable property here.
Absolutely agree, Jack. Now, to be fair, Harris was worked with us on this plan. So this wasn't something we did in a vacuum, right? So that we relied on their consultancy to achieve this plan. So don't want you to think that this was all us, but I absolutely agree with you. And in fact, we probably could have another session on some business ideas that we want to institute into IT. I think the county, I'm going to go on a little tangent here, apologies, but I think the county is in a really great position, not only in the state of Ohio, but with our local municipalities, where we can provide great value to whether it be other counties, other municipalities in IT, and whether that be security, whether that be applications, web development, whatever that service that we're performing here, we have mass, and that's to Cuyahoga County's credit for the way they envisioned this structure to be. And I think that we have an opportunity to go out and help But by help, I also mean, we don't want to charge a profit, we don't want to make a profit, we don't want to make money on this, but we want to cover our expenses and help other counties overcome, help other municipalities overcome what they may be facing. And so I think, again, probably a whole nother conversation we could have on this, but I think you're exactly right. We're creating value here, we're creating assets, we're creating knowledge that we can share and spread to other counties.
Well, and I didn't mean to say Harris hadn't helped us do some of the underlying aspects of it, but what they aren't doing is they aren't going through what you're going through. They're not going through the sweat equity piece that you're doing right this moment. And that's a valuable thing, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn by those. You're going to log them in. You're going to say, okay, here's some trip points that some of the other 87 counties are going to potentially experience. And you can, I know you said you're not going to make a profit, but that doesn't mean you can't make money. Thank you.
Right, so
Okay.
this just is the update, you've seen this slide before, this just represents where we're at with the user acceptance testing and the billing parallel that we have going on. We're currently at 81%, so like I said, we only have 258 test cases to go, so we are in the final stretch, and the push is on.
So, do you have a target date for completion of UAT?
So if we go back to, I can go back to the slide that we have it on, but we are hoping to wrap up UAT and all the system testing by November, mid-November.
So, could you go back again? Yes. Can you say a little bit more about the 47 up from 32 that are blocked? What does that mean?
Sure, so so we have different classifications of our test cases. Blocked means it is not ready for testing right now. So it could be blocked by a number of reasons. For example, our settlement testing, where we're testing the distribution to the municipalities and all of that, we need to finish up a billing parallel before we could do that settlement testing. So it could be that, functionality is not available for testing yet, or it could be that there are processes that are holding up those actual tests.
Dale, and I think what maybe you may be thinking, which I was thinking the same thing when I saw this, is, that's not good news, right? We've gone from 32 and we've increased to 47. But that's just a reflection on where we're at in the process, meaning that we're identifying, we're exercising more as these tests, we're looking ahead, we're trying to figure out what tests are coming up. And as we're going through that process, a new error may pop up or a new process may pop up that we need to address. That would then cause others down the road to be blocked. So the fact that number increase, in my opinion, isn't a great cause for concern unless we're near the very end and we're starting to see that ramp up. Right now, that's just an ebb and a flow of where we're at in the testing process. And in some ways, it's good in the fact that it's been identified. So anyway, I don't know if that was your question, but when I saw that number going up, that wasn't good news to me at the time either. But as I thought about it, it makes sense.
Yeah, and I would just also add that these numbers fluctuate a lot, right? So something's ready to test, someone tests it, it could pass or it could fail. It's going to move throughout these categories. Obviously, we're looking for it to be actually passed, a pass test case instead of a failed or find a block. But those numbers are always going to change as we move throughout the process. Okay. I don't think there's been any change there has definitely not been any change to the financial summary, and I'm going to let Andy take the next slide and wrap it up.
All right, thanks, Deb. So any questions on the financial summary? Again, fixed bid program. We don't pay until milestones are hit. We have not hit those milestones yet, the biggest one being user acceptance testing, which Deb just talked to. So in fact, with the new plan, we've actually pushed payment off to Harris much closer to the go, no-go situation, the final go, no-go situation, which is an advantage to us, which just now is occurring to me.
My one question is on the recent proposed change orders resulting in a possible 0.11 million draw against contingency.
Yeah, so it's $110,000 that we have in some potential change orders. We are still in a couple of negotiations, and what I mean by that is we're in some negotiations with the business. Do we truly need those change orders? So some of the executive level is saying, well, maybe we don't really need that change order. Can we live without it? Which I think is a fair question, a fair debate that we have. I would say that probably two more of those relate to, have we already paid for this? And what I mean by that is these are interfaces that we agreed to in the original contract. I believe there's probably 15, 16 of those that were very loosely described. And two of these change orders are dealing in the interface space. So that's something we're exploring with Harris. When I say exploring, we're negotiating with Harris on, wow, do we really need to pay for that as a change order? If in fact we contracted with it, it's not the exact same name, but it's similar. So that's the negotiation. It's in the scheme of things, it's $100,000. I want to be very sensitive to taxpayer money. And so we were going to try to fight for that, but I also want to make sure that, hey, we're not risking the go live, because that has financial implications there as well to the county. So that's what we mean by the change orders and those pending change orders. Oh, it's got my name on it. All right, so I talked to the risk profile of the project, and this is something I'm always worried about, right? What are our risks, and how do we mitigate those? How do we manage those? And so I mentioned this in the opening remarks, the parallel. And that is of concern, our biggest concern now, and it is the resources that we have to do this parallel. You saw a slide where it listed all these things that we have to do, as well as do the regular job. So that is something that wasn't there last time that we're highlighting for you all today, where we're going to mitigate that. We've got IT resources that we're going to devote to help either monitor or make these changes to keep these systems in sync. So again, highlighting this particular one is the biggest risk that I see that's changed that we're presenting to you today. I'll pause there if there's any questions on that particular one. Okay. Others we have talked about previously, change orders. We just talked about it right now. There is a slight risk there if we come to loggerheads, we can't get past one of them. That could be a risk. I view that as a fairly low risk. It is something we want to acknowledge. It is something that we are bargaining hard for, but I think that we'll be able to get past this one. I don't think this will affect our go-live date. The just-in-time training. This is a little bit of a new concept for the county. I think the county is much more traditional in its sense of, okay, I sit down, I get all my training, and then we roll out and I do all my activities. And we're changing that up a little bit. We're changing that up to where we're training just prior to the actual activities they're going to do. I know me, for one, I don't want to learn 3 months ago, I don't want to have learned something that I'm going to do today because I would have completely forgotten everything that I learned. So we're breaking that up, that training piece up. That is something new, and sometimes the county or big organizations have difficulty dealing with that. And so that's something that we're going to work with our change management team on getting the county to open up to this notion of, you're not going to get everything trained at once. You can get those pieces that you need to do your job in the next phase. Bit of a risk, but again, I think we can mitigate that. End-to-end process. That's something that the business has complained about, and I'm going to steal a line from Connie Geddes, who you all are familiar with, where she has said, hey, when you film a movie, You don't film the movie from beginning to end. You film pieces of that movie, and at the end, you assemble it all together. And that's what we're faced with here, right? We're doing pieces of this project. We have been doing pieces of this project. The complaint from the business is, hey, we haven't seen this whole thing go from billing to collection to disbursements. We haven't seen that whole process beginning to end. And so it's a fair criticism. But with this parallel that we're introducing, they will see pieces of that from beginning to end. The training will go and be complementary to that beginning to end so that they will get that comfort level. It won't be exact. It'll be very tough to maintain a year-long parallel, but that is one item that we wanted to highlight as a risk, and particularly a risk that's in the business mind.
Okay.
And that's all we have.
So, any other questions about Harris? We have our next Finance and Budgeting Committee scheduled for September 19th. That's about halfway through your implementation process, so we're probably going to ask you to come back at that time and give us another update.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
In September, do you have a projection of where you'll be as far as your completion of all these steps?
I think I'd have to cheat and look at my chart.
No. I was going to get, why don't you give me your Kentucky windage as far as?
So, Jack, it's fair to say that we've
We
got a
should be
lot.
pretty close by then.
We should be pretty close,
Yep.
yeah. We, as we disclosed last time, there's still a lot of potholes out there. And, the project has to move, and it has to move well. And so if it doesn't, we will be in communication with you all that it's not moving well. So to predict where we'll be, we're planning to be where we said we were going to be, but to predict, things have to go right. They have to go well, as with any project.
Well, because there's got to be a go, no-go some point along the way, and that's where I was trying to get to is.
Okay.
Yes.
There are multiple go, no-goes. We're always going to keep pressing to go if we can see a path to going live. But the minute that we can't see that path, then we have to come back to you and explain what we see and what our plans are. And you can count on the fact that we're not just going to throw up our hands and say, "Oh, we can't make it. Woe is me." We will come back with a proposal. But right now, full speed ahead, foot on the accelerator, aiming for that go live.
Yeah, because unlike the payroll where we could move it potentially quarters and stuff like that, this is either now or 6 months from now. Yeah, I don't envision you would go live in the middle of a billing period. You're going to either be this billing period or the next one, and so we've got to catch this one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentations. And we are now going to move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is executive session. All meetings of the Cuyahoga County Council and its committees are open to the public under the open meetings laws. Under that law, council may go into executive session during a meeting for specifically authorized purposes. During executive session, council confers outside of the hearing of the public. Council may not make any decisions about any matters in executive session. All decisions are made in public. This afternoon, Council's Finance and Budgeting Committee will go into executive session to discuss security matters. Specifically, we're going to be discussing IT security upgrades that are planned, and we don't want to publicly disclose any potential vulnerabilities, so that's why we're going to be in executive session. During this time, our live stream will be down, and we ask all those not specifically needed for the executive session to remain in council chambers. Council members will convene in the adjacent Committee Room A and will re-enter the meeting once the executive session has ended. And I will add that after the executive session has ended, when we come back in public, we're not expecting to discuss or take any particular action. It's only informational, so there's not going to be any significant business after the executive session. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing security matters?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and I would now ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion to go into executive session.
Calling the roll on the motion to move into executive session, Mr. Tuma,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is absent right now. Mr. Shrine,
Yes?
Ms. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. The ayes have it, and we will adjourn the meeting for an executive session. Finance and Budgeting Committee is reconvened back in the public session. And does anybody have any miscellaneous business? Under miscellaneous business, I would just remind everybody that that in November and December of this year, we're going to have the mid-year budget process where we review the biennial budget and reset the second year of the budget. So stay tuned for that. Does anybody have anything else? Hearing nothing and there being no other business, we stand adjourned. Thanks very much, everyone.